Well, UFC 263 is right on the horizon, and at least the time of recording this, it looks to be one hell of a fight. But with that come some big questions. Maybe not that big, but with Adesanya Vittoria 2, Figueiredo Moreno 2, this appears one heck of a card. So I feel like this warrants looking at each fight, breaking it down, and giving my unsolicited opinion on who's going to win. So what better way to start with this banger of a card than with the early prelims? Kianzad Davis is the first one of the early prelims we're going to look at first. The 14-5 Bonsai takes on the 20-10 Alligator with the worst nickname I've ever heard so far. You have an inch of height to Kianzad and a 2-inch reach advantage to Davis, though there is a 7-year age difference between these two fighters. Kianzad is coming off 3 unanimous decision wins over the 10-6 Jessica Rose Clark, 11-5 Beth Carrera, and 6-6 Jara Eubanks. Looking at her fighting style, striking is her strength, and it is something she uses heavily. Specifically, the Rose Clark fight, she outstrikes her opponent every round, had a significant strike percentage of 41%. So this is definitely something you're looking out for, is her striking. And she uses it very heavily, very efficiently, and it's consistent across all her wins that she is dominant in this regard. Davis is also coming off a win, this one unanimous decision, against the 9-2 Sabina Mazo, halting a 3-fight slide. In this win, she had 59% of her significant strikes, 3 takedowns, and 8 minutes and 50 seconds of control. General dominance on that front. Looking at the older fights, you see a bit more of a well-rounded game with Davis, more of a ground game present than Kianzad. Doesn't mean that Kianzad doesn't have it, but I just haven't seen it in the UFC fights. Looking at some of her older film and other fights, her highlights even, you do see the ground game there, but I'm not sure how well it'll translate against Davis. On that note, Davis also tends to rely on striking, and I think this is important to look at because even in the fight against Mazo, Davis was taking shots quickly before they put Mazo down. Like, before Mazo hit the canvas, she was eating shots. However, the ground game came into play, was able to control Mazo, and generally just win the fight in that regard. Looking at the end of this fight, I give the edge to Kianzad, kind of following the Vegas odds. Both her momentum in the last few wins, the edge to her striking game, just seems to put her over the top for me. It'll be a close fight, but I do think Kianzad wins in the end. Camacho Favola. 22-9 Crank takes on the 8-2 Steamroller with an A. You have an inch of height and 2 inches reach for Camacho with a 2-year age gap between these two fighters. Camacho is coming in with a more experienced fighter off 2 consecutive losses to Benelli Dariush and Justin James. Both finished in the first round with a rear naked choke and punches respectively. Looking at their stats, Camacho is also striking heavy. You have 6.67 significant strikes landed per minute, but also good takedown and striking defense at 72 and 52% respectively. Camacho is the one I have a lot of data on. Favola, on the other hand, is also coming off a loss, but I have much less data than him. However, Favola is definitely better at the takedowns. He's better at getting it to the ground. Does not mean Camacho can't, but it just means that he tends to rely on his striking more so than his ground game. This looks to be a pretty close fight in that regard. Crank has the experience, but I think Favola, with his takedown ability and ability to take it to the ground, will help even that a little bit. I mean, 52% takedown defense across his UFC career is good. So if he can keep it standing, I see it going to Camacho. And this is a fight that can go either way. The betting odds do favor Favola slightly. However, I am going to go with Camacho here. I feel like his striking game is going to keep him above, and if he can defend the takedown well, this keeps it on the feet. This keeps it in his area where he has done well and looks to be very good at. I just don't see the same striking prowess from Favola. Hooper Peterson. The 10-1 Teenage Dream taking on the 18-9 Ocho Peterson. There is a 4-inch height and reach difference favoring Hooper, as well as a 10-year age difference between these two fighters. Hooper is coming off a submission win over Peter Barrett, and looking at his stats and film, you see a generally well-rounded game as you see with a lot of fighters kind of in this weight class. They're able to do a lot of things well. Only issue I have looking at his data and saying he looks really good is that there's such a small sample size in the UFC. These are all heavily taken with a grain of salt by me. He has shown the ability to go the distance, finish on the feet, and use ground skills. So there's good things to look at here. I just don't know how well it translates to somebody who has more experience like Ocho. Patterson also, in this regard, is coming off a win, this one being a spinning bat fist TKO that earned him a Performance of the Night bonus. He also is a well-rounded fighter, based on what I've seen, but he has a definite emphasis on his ground game and takedowns. He has an average of 2.0 takedowns and a 75% takedown defense and 8 submission victories. That's where I think this fight changes and matters. Peterson is a very different fighter than I think Hooper is. Hooper looks to be this well-rounded guy who's able to strike and looks to have a decent ground game. Peterson looks to be the grappler who can throw punches, and I think that's important here. The odds do favor Peterson, and I'm going to agree, but with a caveat, this can really go either way, I feel like. We don't have a lot about Hooper. There's not a lot to see, not a lot to do at this level. So maybe Hooper's outstanding on the ground, we just don't know. But with what I know, with what I've seen, Peterson has the edge in the ground game, and I think this fight's going to the ground with Peterson winning in the end. Ziam Vendramini. The 11-3 Smile Killer Ziam, 9-1 Italian Stallion Vendramini square off with a 4-inch height difference and a 2-inch reach difference, all favoring Ziam. Ziam is coming off a unanimous decision win over Jamie Malarkey, with the whitest name ever. And this actually marks his third official UFC fight. Based on what I could see, he is, again, a well-rounded fighter, accurate striking, and good cardio. I didn't see a whole lot of ground game. So once again, you have that question of, can he do it? How good is he at it? Is it a survive? Is it a thrive? We'll have to see. Vendramini is also coming off a win. This one is actually a TKO, though, instead of decision. This will also be his third UFC fight. So we have two kind of rookies going at it, not a lot of information either. Interestingly enough, he seems to be a bit more aggressive compared to Ziam and has some sort of submission threat, as he has thrown 2 of them. Comparing these two fighters, this is a hard one to call based on how little UFC data there is. Looking at their careers, it's a hard call, and the Vegas odds reflect that, but on my general overview, I am favoring Ziam here. Ziam, I think, is going to be able to work the feet a little bit better than Vendramini is. Vendramini struck me as more of he likes taking it to the mat and he likes dominating from there, but if Ziam can keep it on the feet, I think that's more his domain. Could be 100% wrong. But I'm going with Ziam based on his cardio, what I've seen, and it could entirely just be because of a better nickname that I'm biased. Felipe Collier. 10-2, Boy Felipe goes after 12-5, Prototype Collier. Collier does have a 3-inch height and reach advantage, though he's also 6 years older. Felipe is the general heavyweight you'll see in the UFC, propensity to swing, but interestingly enough, also has gone the distance in all 3 of his UFC fights so far. He is coming off a win, but still seems incredibly new to the UFC. So looking at his stats is not the greatest way to measure up how he's going to face off against this opponent. Overall, he looks like a very accurate puncher, some sort of takedown defense, and he looks to be a fairly complete heavyweight fighter. Still probably needs to develop a little bit to move up in the ranks, but I think that he has potential. Collier has more fights in the UFC and is coming off a win over Guion Violante. He has a bit more of a varied stat spread, but at the same time, I don't see a lot of real challenges that he's fought in the UFC, given that Violante is 17-13. So based on his spread, he looks like a well-rounded fighter, but there is a large if attached against high-level opponents in the heavyweight division. Looking at this fight, Collier looks like a more well-rounded fighter, but at the same time, the heavyweight division's a lot about power. Felipe has takedown defense. He has shown it, and he seems to have it. If Collier gets it to the ground, I think the fight changes a little bit, because I haven't seen what Felipe can do on the ground. But I think Felipe is the fighter to pick for this. I'm ignoring records, I'm ignoring time in the UFC, mostly just looking at the performance and the stats. I think Felipe comes out on top if it stays on the feet. I think he has the better chin and the better fists here. I think his takedown defense will also be major, because I think if Collier goes for it, it's not going to work out well. Now, the prelims. Evelev Davuto. 14-0, Masvidal, no name, Evelev, looks to continue a streak against the 12-1 Hakeem Mean Davuto. Both fighters are 5'8", according to Sherdog, with a minor, reach advantage to Mean, and a negligible 2-year age difference between the two. Evelev is coming off a 4-fight winning streak, with all wins coming by decision, so there are no questions about his gas tank. Additionally, in each fight, he's outstruck his opponent handedly, in addition to what looks like a solid ground game. The ability to stack takedowns and build up time with control coming from that. I do find it odd there has not been a finish yet. Not so much doubting his power, just pointing out something that I thought was weird based on how soundly it seemed like he was winning these fights. Not really criticism, just confusion on my part. On the other hand, Cejudo is coming off a 5-fight winning streak, last win coming ironically on the Adesanya Costa card. He has a similar trajectory to Evelev, ignoring his first loss in the UFC, being his first fight in the UFC. Each win shows off his striking prowess, but there's also only one finish to the name, and it doesn't seem like there's a well-developed ground game. But on that note, he is capable of getting off the ground, surviving on the ground. This is an interesting fight for me to look at based on looking at these two fighters. Both seem to be on a hot streak. Both seem to be working really quickly forward. But it just is confusing to look at and try to pick here. I'm going to run with Vegas odds here. Evelev's ability to generate takedowns, I feel like, will be the difference in this fight. Simply dropping him and keeping him down there based on how the fact that Cejudo is able to survive, but time on top equals time on control, looks good to a judge's scorecard and can tire an opponent out. Murphy Calderwood. 14-4, Lucky Murphy goes after the 15-5, Jojo Calderwood. You have an inch difference in height favoring Calderwood, but a 2-inch reach advantage going to Murphy. Murphy is coming off a 4-fight win streak with 2 decisions, 1 submission, and 1 TKO. So, ability to go the distance, finish the fight on the feet, and finish it on the ground. Stylistically, Murphy is the very definition of a well-rounded fighter. Good ability to strike when on the feet, but is also definitely able to generate takedowns and give herself control over the fight on the ground, making you constantly worry if she's considering taking it to the ground versus keeping it on the feet. Calderwood, on the other hand, is also coming off a victory and looking to extend a winning streak, but only to 2 this time. Once again, you have the ability to go the distance and finish the fight, but you also have the caveat that she seems to be easier to get control over on the ground. Looking at the eye fight, specifically, you see that a lot, that she was taken down and controlled on the ground pretty frequently and easily. Not easily, but you know what I meant. This doesn't take away from her skills, as she's looks to be incredibly well-rounded and skilled, and has a high takedown accuracy, meaning that her attempts do tend to go down to the canvas. But the thing is that just looking at this, it looks like Murphy is better at the ground game. So is her takedown going to be that good? And if she's easy to control over on the ground, is it her best bet to have that in her pocket? Now, the betting odds do give Calderwood the slight edge, but I'm going to go against them here, and I'm going to pick Murphy. I feel like Murphy's ground control will be key here. I feel like even if Murphy gets taken down, she will be able to flip it around better and get back on top. Anders Stewart. 13-5, yo boy, Anders matches against the dentist Stewart after the no contest of their last fight because of an illegal knee that wasn't remotely close to being legal. I mean, you don't throw that there. That's not like, oh, his knee was close or, oh, his hand was barely on the ground. That was literally blatant as all hell. But besides that, you have an inch height and reach advantage to Anders with a 4-year age difference, all favoring Stewart. In the original fight, your boy was doing well. He was striking, secured 2 takedowns, and this reflects his overall generally rounded style. It is important to note that he has only gone for 9 takedowns in his last 7 fights. So 6 of those coming in his loss against Thiago Hammertat Santos, and 3 in the no contest against Stewart. So it exists, but it doesn't seem to be something he uses commonly. It looks to be more of a strategy or matchup decision that he makes, but being able to use it is still a major help. Stewart, on the other hand, is a bit heavier on the grappling, but seems to have a little sloppier striking in terms of getting hit, but not being hit. That came out weird. Let me explain. This is in terms of him getting hit, not him hitting people. Meaning that for every strike he seems to land, he does seem to get hit back, and it doesn't seem that his striking defense is all that great. Looking at the original fight, he was getting handled pretty well. That was also only the first round, so maybe he turns around the second. Maybe his ground game comes back with a vengeance. We don't know, because he got the illegal knee to the head again. The betting odds here favor Anders, and going off the original fight until the blatant and obvious foul that shouldn't have been thrown at all, I am definitely inclined to agree. Stewart can easily turn this around, but we just haven't seen anything. We don't know if his game plan will change. We don't know if he's gonna be the aggressor, if he's gonna try to steal the initiative. We just don't know. Dober Riddell. 23-10 Dober take on 9-1 Quake Riddell in his 4th UFC fight. Both are the same height, with Riddell having a 1-inch reach advantage and 3-year age advantage. Now, Dober is coming off a submission loss to Islam Makhachev, and honestly that highlights a trend I see where Dober gets taken down pretty frequently. This is listed with the caveat that he is able to recover and seems to be good working on the ground and able to score takedowns on his own. Dober also has finishing power, and striking is one of his strengths. And looking at Riddell on the other hand, he is relatively new to the scene, so his UFC stats are very sparse. This seems to be a big test for him going forward, looking to see how he handles I want to say the word veteran in this case, veteran, of the UFC. I do notice that in every fight so far, the opponent has multiple takedowns against him. Against someone like Dober, I'm not sure if that's the best thing to have. Maybe he's improved his defense, we don't know, but if he gets taken to the ground, I don't know if Dober will be able to maneuver better. He's also outstruck his opponent in every fight so far, so looking at this fight, this is a major test for Riddell. They look to be a little bit even in striking, with Dober having the edge, but the ground game has me worried here, actually. I think if Dober ever does get rocked, he'll shoot the takedown, and that could flip a fight. Odds do give the edge to Dober, and I have to agree with them. Dober has the more experience, looks to have the more powerful striking, and at the same time looks to have the better ground game here. Riddell can easily turn this around. We just haven't seen anything. We just don't know. But I give the edge to Dober. I think Dober wins this. Now, the main card, finally. Craig Hill. The 14-4 Bear Jew Craig looks to keep his win streak alive against the 8-0 Sweet Dreams Hill. Hill takes a 3-inch reach advantage and 3-year age advantage over Craig. Now, Craig is the more experienced fighter, and looking at both his resume and stats, seems to be heavier on grappling than striking, especially when looking at his strikes absorbed compared to strikes landed. 2.40 to 2.43. Now, what this means for anyone who, no one's lost any fights to understand, but for the sake of my sanity, that means he lands 2.4 strikes per minute. At the same time, he gets hit with 2.43 strikes per minute, meaning that his striking defense isn't really there. He seems to rely on his chin just to keep up and to get it to the ground quickly. I'm aware these stats don't tell the full story, but looking at the fact that 5 of his 6 UFC wins are by submission, and only his most recent coming by TKO, and the fact that a majority of his losses have come by punches, it seems like striking is where he's weakest and it's where his opponents can beat him. Hill, on the other hand, is coming in as an undefeated fighter with 1 no contest against Klidson Abreu. In his wins, he has handily outstruck his opponent and avoided spending a lot of time on the ground. This is the importance, again, of seeing how he handles the ground game. This does come with a caveat. He's only been taken down repeatedly in 1 fight. So we haven't seen how hard he's had to fight to get off the ground, or against someone like Craig, who looks to be a better grappler. Additionally, it's important to note that a vast majority of his punches do come at range, as well as his finishes. So that reach advantage might come in handy here. If Craig looks to shoot a takedown, looks to work in, Hill can keep him at range. Once again, this is a fight that seems close, and the odds are favoring Hill, but I'm going to go with Craig based on the grappling. I have a soft spot for the ground game for no real reason, and I feel like if Craig gets us to the mat, and it looks to be that he's a better grappler than what Hill has faced so far. So if Craig gets on top and dominates and Hill can't get up, he'll wear him down or knock him out. I think that Craig takes the advantage here. Maia Muhammad. In this bout of alliteration, 28-10, Demian Maia takes on 18-3. Remember the name, Muhammad. Maia is 2 inches taller with no reach advantage to either fighter. Maia is also 11 years older. Mimicking Olenek here, aren't we? Maia wheels his walker in as the more experienced fighter by far, with a well-acknowledged ground game. Specifically, in almost every single one of his UFC wins, he secured at least 1 takedown in his opponent and was able to make sure they were on the ground completely. Looking at his losses, opponents like Kamaru Usman, he went 0 for 15 on takedowns, and while he technically matched the striking percentage of Usman landed 66 to Maia's 27. So striking is not Maia's specialty, but he is able to do it in some capacity. Bilal does resemble Maia in regards to the focus on the ground game, But looking at his fights, it seems that he's able to handle himself better on the feet, looking at his loss to Jeff Neal. He was thoroughly beat, that is true, but comparing it to Maia's fight against Usman, there was some striking momentum here compared to Maia's 27 to Usman's 66. It was a little closer. Now, Jeff Neal's a good fighter. I just believe that in this fight, the odds favor Belal, and I'm inclined to agree. Bilal's been able to prevent the takedown and control on his own, and Maia is incredibly reliant on getting those takedowns. This is a fight that I feel can flip quickly like a lot of ground matches can, but I'm going to have to give the edge to Muhammad here. Edwards-Diaz, the fight we are getting for some reason. 18-3, Rocky Edwards takes on the 20-12, Nate, needs no introduction, Diaz. Diaz is 7 years older and takes a 2-inch reach advantage in this fight. Edwards is coming into this off a no contest against Belal after an accidental eye gouge. Looking at Edwards' fight history, you do see a general mix of skills, a clear strength when it comes to grappling, since in literally every single one of his last 8 fights, he's had at least one takedown. So this is realistically how this fight's probably going to go. It's going to go down to the canvas probably multiple times throughout, or maybe as a recovery. On the other hand, you have Diaz, who is Diaz. That means he has dangerous stand-up, the ability to strike. He has a ground game as well, able to fight off his back and work off the ground. Submissions are in his repertoire. But I think the big question here is not his skill, it's how much athleticism and durability does Diaz have now. I believe he still has gas in the tank, so his skill set should work well in this fight. It should make Edwards work, but at the same time, we just don't know. It's a solid challenge for Diaz. The odds are giving the edge to Edwards, and I make sense. I do feel like Diaz has that little bit of X factor that's like one good shot, one momentum shift, and suddenly Edwards is on his back feet. But in the end, I am picking Edwards here based off their ability to generate the ground game, their strength, and I feel like the 7-year age difference might be a bigger thing than I think in this fight. Figueiredo Moreno, the rematch between Deus de Guerrera and the Assassin Baby. Moreno is 2 inches taller, has a 2-inch reach advantage, as well as being 6 years younger. Figueiredo is able to put his opponents down with a mix of powerful striking, efficient grappling, and overall tenacity. The original fight made nobody think less of him, and if he can repeat that performance minus the foul that cost him the fight, it is winnable. He has the skills, he has the power, and any weaknesses that were there aren't large enough for me to nitpick without being a fighter myself. However, a lot of questions are on Moreno here. Moreno is coming to this fight looking to improve on what happened last time. I feel like his grappling was the one thing that he kind of had going. He had 3 minutes of control with it. It doesn't seem like a lot, but I feel like it helped him win 2 rounds there. But you can also do a lot with it if you can keep it for longer. He was able to keep it close with striking, but he was never able to make that jump past Figueiredo. So something in this fight has to go up another level. I think grappling is the way to go, but maybe it's his striking and maybe he improves it rapidly. We don't know yet. Something does definitely have to go up a notch, though. This is not something that can be a repeat, because if it's a repeat, he loses the fight. Odds stay Figueiredo. I have to agree. Figueiredo looked well in the last fight. He was performing well. Without that foul, realistically, he wins the fight. So unless Assassin Baby ups it by 12 notches, Figueiredo wins. Now, for your main event. Well, main event. Adesanya Vettori 2. Stylebender rematches the Italian Dream coming off a loss to light heavyweight champ Jan Blachowicz. Vettori is also coming to win, but Kevin Holland's name is not as fun to say. Adesanya is 4 inches taller with a 6-inch reach advantage, in addition to being 3 years older. So we know about Adesanya. Excellent striker, is able to survive on the ground, and has decent takedown defense. A majority of his wins, he outstrikes his opponents by a serious amount, and has good striking defense with a 61% average across his UFC fights. Looking at his loss to Blachowicz, though, we saw how he was able to handle getting hit, because he was outstruck a majority of that fight. There were takedowns generated against him, 3 of 5, I believe, and he was able to handle somebody who was definitely heavier and seemed to be definitely stronger than him. So we saw the full endurance of Adesanya on display, and the question I have for Adesanya is how well you handle takedowns. He has the good takedown defense. That's not a question. But the question is, we saw what happened with Jan Blachowicz. 3 of 5 to generate control across 5 rounds for a generally dominant win by Jan. Vettori is a wrestler. Looking at his fight with Kevin Holland, he had 11 takedowns. Now, what Adesanya has been doing has worked, but the fear is that if Vettori steps up to that next level, it won't. And as I said, Vettori had 11 takedowns against Kevin Holland. And that wrestling, I feel, is the focus of this fight. Because I don't think that Vettori will be able to match the striking of Adesanya. There's a chance he might land good shots, but I feel like the ground game, once again, is the important factor here. So Vettori's success relies on his wrestling. I don't think Kevin Holland is as good as Adesanya. At the same time, questions can be asked here. How good is it? Well, the odds favor Adesanya, and I'm following suit, but I see a clear way for Vettori to win. If Vettori is to win, I think it relies on taking him down hard early, first or second round, and pounding the ever-loving Christ out of him. I think Vettori's best bet is the finish. I don't think if this fight goes a distance, it ends well for him. I think in the long haul, Adesanya only gets better in these rounds. His endurance is very good. I don't think Vettori can survive and continue to do well all these shots. It was a split decision in the 3-round fight. Now there's 5 rounds. It's going to be a bit harder. And well, that's the card. Those are my unsolicited opinions, and let's hope they're good, and let's hope they're right.